So welcome. I'm an associate fellow here. I teach on the Youth Climate summits and all of the programmes that we run in the summer school. I absolutely adore working with young people. I'm very old, I'm 56, but after I left school, I volunteered every year with my old school. So I take children on school trips, whether they're history, English, French or summer camps, and even one of the things I enjoy the most is doing the camps and the ski trips, because it takes you out of your academic setting and frees your minds to other things like how to negotiate with people when all of a sudden you have to sleep with people in bunk beds, which you haven't had to do before, and you've got to negotiate who's going to be in the bathroom first and things like that. So they're great fun. Ollie and I work together in my company called Brand Conscience, and we look at sustainability and trying to help large brands with making better decisions when they're buying. We focus on fashion because it's one of the areas that really causes a lot of problems in the world. Now, I do teach academically, but we thought we'd do something really good fun today, because you've heard a lot already about climate and why everything is really important that we make a change and do something different. So, Ollie, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself. You're taller than me, so the mic will pick you up better. So Ollie works for me. Ollie, just do a bit about yourself, what degree you've done and what you're doing at our company.
So I just graduated doing sport and exercise science from Cardiff Met, and for Karen's company I currently do AI coding, vibe coding for things like chatbots and trend analysis tools.
So my background was actually deep tech, so I learnt to code properly when you had to actually write the code yourself. That was my first degree. I did my master's here in strategy and innovation. And so what we're going to talk to you about is how technology can really help you innovate and do things quicker. Now, later on today, you're going to see a really different session about prototyping using the things that you've got around you, because tech isn't always the answer to everything. And depending on where you are in the world, you won't always have access to technology. We've used a lot of phones, so the reason that we've got the AV tech with us is because we're going to do some really bleeding edge stuff that they've not had to necessarily do before. So we're going to go through actually code some stuff live on stage with you, and we're going to use our phones. So if you're in Africa, you probably don't have access to a desktop, but you're more likely to have access to a phone. So we thought it was really important that we showed you how we can use phones for technology. So I'll just, can we just throw one of the slides up? That's okay, I'll talk to it anyway. So I can't walk around with one of these, can I? Can I use that one now? Good.
D1. Thank you.
So whilst they sort the tech out, we'll just go through some things. So AI, I ran an AI team at IBM, so I worked in big companies. IBM had 420,000 people, and then I left IBM and started up with 5 of us. There's 12 of us now. When you work for a really massive company, you've got all the resources in the world that you need. You can go and ask for somebody to do something. When you work in a small company, you actually have to do nearly everything yourself, or find people that can do the things you can't do. So we're working on a satellite project at the moment, and we're looking at how we can actually understand water use in growing cotton, because our clothes use lots of water in the growing and manufacturing process. So we use satellite Earth observation data to understand what's going on in a field, because you can look down from above and see some real detail about who's doing good things and who's not necessarily doing such good things. So as part of that, when you all have ideas all the time, and I'm going to look at the front row because these look like my young people in the front row. So where do you have your best ideas? Is it when you're in the shower? Is it when you're walking the dog? Is it when you're walking to school? When do you have great ideas? Four walks a day, so you've got lots of time to come up with ideas because you're out walking the dog. Wonderful. When do you come up with ideas? If someone said to you, find an idea so that you can solve a problem at school, what would you do? Would you get together with your friends and think about that? Yeah, so you might get together and actually think about brainstorming, it's called. So you get together and consider when you're going to do it. Lots of people have them when they're not thinking about the problem. So they're doing something completely different. They might be in the shower, and all of a sudden they think, I know, this would be a brilliant idea. But turning that idea into an innovation is where the real magic happens, because we all have lots and lots of ideas, but they're not necessarily going to work, and they're not necessarily going to work in the way you thought they would work. And there are lots of people that create companies and never sell anything because they didn't check with anybody whether or not what they were creating was actually a viable solution and somebody wanted to pay for it. So we have to think about who we create value for, what's the problem we're solving, and how are we going to actually deliver that value, and how are we going to capture that value. So even if you're running a charity, even if you're running something called a non-profit, you still need to make sure that you have money coming in to pay your staff. Because although you're not trying to make profits so you can go and buy a fast car or a jet, you still have to actually pay people to do the work. So a lot of people volunteer at charities, but for a lot of people, it's a job. They're working in a non-profit company. So it's really important that you know how you're going to create that value and who's going to pay you to do it. And that might not be the same people that you're actually creating the value for. So if you think about if somebody doesn't have enough money to get to school, and it's a long, long way to get to school, doesn't matter what country you're in, but you might walk, you might get a lift, or you might cycle, or a nice company might actually sponsor a minibus or a bike or a bus to get you to school. So there are other people that sometimes pay for the things that people that don't have the money need. And that's really important. So what we're going to do is get you to vote on some ideas, and we're actually going to show you how we could code something really quickly whilst we're with you today, code an app, so that you can see how we can decide who we're creating the value for and actually create a solution. So this is very exciting. We said this would be hairy because we hadn't practiced this, so there you go. And part of this is real life. I was presenting the other day at Ox Tech Week. So we held our first Oxford Tech Week, which was the business school and a bunch of companies, Oxford funders and founders, and then a load of companies sponsored it so we could showcase how great Oxford was from a technology perspective. And in the middle of my presentation, I'd actually got partway through that one, the people that were organising it had forgot to plug the power in. And whilst I was doing deep technical as well. And deeply in my technical presentation, the power on the laptop went off. But luckily, I'd memorised my presentation and could still talk to it. So this is, we sing and dance if it goes wrong. Excellent. So we've got four applications or 4 ideas, and I'm hoping, does this move up, Purdy? It does. Could you shove that up for me? Because then I can use the whiteboard. Has it got a break on the side now? It's heavy. Pull the white one up. Perfect. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to get, thank you. I'm going to get a pen. So I'm going to come back to, and anybody can join in, and online, Purdy. What we want to know is, if we think about human rights, there are some basic things that are human rights that many people in the world don't have access to. Clean water. They don't have access to education. They don't have access to food. So there are many things that the UN human rights are trying to protect and actually fix, because there's a lot broken in the world. But instead of getting depressed about it, our job is to do something about that and think about how we can do something with it. So access to clean water is one problem that we could solve. What other things exist? We could do something like look at food waste. So in school, sometimes you get given food that you don't particularly like. And what tends to happen to that food is we leave it and we don't eat it. And then it's wasted. And instead of giving you food that you like, which might be pizza, but that's not particularly good for you to have all the time, we've got to think about how we can actually encourage you to eat things that are good and how to create less food waste. Now, there are other countries where they'd be really happy with some of the food that we're given, particularly in the UK. So we've got, thank you, Ollie. Do you want to flick to our food waste? We can come back to some of the other slides. Thank you. So quality education. You know, sometimes you don't want to go to school, it's been a hard day, and you've still got to go to school the next day. But actually, access to quality education is something that really helps people lift out of poverty. And people will walk for miles and miles and miles to go to school where they don't have access to schooling. So on a day when you're feeling like not going to school, remember there are other children that are desperate to go to school. What else have we got up there? Oh, so Ollie is very happy for me to talk about this. I checked beforehand. Ollie's dyslexic, and that means when he was at school, he needed to sometimes have more time. He needed to have somebody read some really complex things for him. And Ollie's just finished his degree, so dyslexia is just the different way that your brain is wired, not whether you're clever or not. And we looked at whether you could use AI, use technology to actually simplify so that you could have education even if you are neurodivergent. And that's a really important thing. And we know there's lots of evidence that says people that are neurodivergent are actually super creative. They come up with lots of ideas. And this helps them live in a world that wasn't designed for people with differences. So we've got a number here, and there's another one up here, misinformation. How do you know when something's real when you get information? If you see it on, how do you know?
Well, for example, when they send you a scanning out, they might pronounce your name wrong or your email address.
Check for mistakes, because quite often they're not from your country, they're doing it from another country, and they make obvious errors. What happens in politics when it's misinformation? So you're being given information that says, did you know, the world's about to end tomorrow, and you're thinking, really? Because I think my mum and dad would have told me about that if that was about to happen. So how do we know whether something's true or not? So what we've got up here is a misinformation one as well. And doing a check. And we haven't practiced this one, so that could be quite exciting to make us do that one. So what do people want to see in the room or online, Purdy? Does there any thoughts online about which ones people want us to code? And what we're going to do is go through can you go back to the screen that's got the green things on it, please? Keep going. Go back another, that one. So we talked about who you're creating value for, and now we're just looking at this. What's the problem that we have? How do we generate ideas? How do we make it visible? How do we show people something so that we know that they actually want that we've understood the problem and we know what it is that they want to do? And then test it, refine it, so that it's easier for people to adopt. So, any ideas online about what people want to do, Purdy? Excellent. Should we do that one then? Okay, so Ollie, do you want to flick off the screen and go onto your... So we're doing this live. I'll just talk about it. And what we're going to show you is Ollie's actually going to show you how easy this is to do in AI. Now, you should only do this, particularly if you're under 16, if you're with your parents. Thank you very much. And if you're with your parents, then this kind of thing is okay, or with your teachers at school, but don't do this at home on your own. Don't access AI on your own. It's like any technology. It can be used for really, really great things, and it can be used for really, really terrible things. So we're going to use it for something really good. So there are lots of different AI systems that you can use. And we tend to use Copilot, which is a Microsoft one, and we quite like Claude. I like Claude more than Ollie likes Claude. So we're going to use Claude to... Do you want to use Claude to start with on this one? Excellent. So, Ollie, the question that came up was quality education. How do we provide quality education? So if we think about the neurodivergence one there, write a prompt for us. And what we're going to do is think about... The first thing you're going to do is check, is this what you wanted? So we're going to... Should we sketch it first, Ollie?
Yeah, I think let's go for a sketch first. So we get the idea behind it, and then you can change things from there.
Cool. Thank you very much. So AI can be used for lots of things, and what it can do, you can ask it, and you just use your own language to ask it. You don't have to know how to code. You tell it what you want. And so we're going to say to Claude, that we've got an idea of how we could help people with learning difficulties. And we're going to see what it comes up with. And Ollie's going to ask it to create a sketch. And the idea of creating a sketch is that we can then take it to people and say, would this help you with the problem that you have? So we've already identified there's lots of people in education that have different types of learning abilities, and it may be a neurodivergence. So you can see Ollie's typing this real time, so he stood there with his phone. Could you provide a sketch? So you tell it that you want a sketch. If you don't tell it you want a sketch, it gets too excitable and actually creates the app instead of creating the sketch. And the problem is you've then got to go back and unpick an app. So it's much easier if we just ask it to create a storyboard. Do you use storyboards at school? You do? Yeah, have you used storyboards? So have you done comic strips? Have you done comic strips in art? Excellent. So often you'll, in trying to show what you're going to develop, you first of all sketch something. So you don't have to do all of the work, but you sketch something out first. So we were asking Claude to do a 3-frame storyboard. Now, because it does take a little time, we're going to try something that's going to test the AV team. So on our laptop, Ollie, should we pull up, was there another favourite, Purdy, on those? Maybe the food waste one? Food waste.
We don't actually have access to codecs, unfortunately.
We can't get access to codec. That's exciting. Okay. Misinformation. That's okay.
We could always open a new chat on Claude. And
do you want to do that on mine?
Well, I can do it on here as well.
Okay. So one of the things that is really good is, unlike our brains, which can't actually do 2 things at once, you can switch these and you can ask it to create 2 different things at the same time, and it will run on one and run on another. And Ollie actually does this when he's working for us. So whilst he's working for us, it might be taking a long time to code one thing, so we start on something else. And it's super clever. It can branch, so you can actually start a conversation and then branch off into another part of the conversation. So Claude will begin to actually think about, whilst it's thinking about the first problem, you can get it thinking about the second problem as well that you're trying to solve. And then what it will do is it will pop up and tell us when it's actually come up with something. And then we're going to test it out with you and see what you think before we create an app. And depending on how complex the problem is, will depend on how long it takes you. So you heard from the speaker before, they look at masses and masses of data. The more data that you're looking at, the more data intense something is, the more information you've got, the longer that it will take to do something. Cool. So it's, what's it done, Ollie? It's thought about...
Yeah, it's created us a storyboard for the initial app that we were creating for people with learning difficulties.
Okay, let's have a look at that then. So it's got a friendly logo. It's suggesting we have a friendly logo, warm greetings, sets a calm, low pressure tone. It asks you to pick a learning style, and then it gives us a first frame. The user opens the app, selects their preferred learning mode and difficulty in a simple icon-led, so pictures, we're using pictures for this. Scroll up for me. Bold visual and read aloud audio for every question. So one of the things that often you have to have in doing tests, if you have something like dyslexia, is you have to have the text read out to you out loud. Pay somebody and find somebody that's got the time to do that for you. And it costs the schools a lot of money. And of course the parents are there saying, yes, but you know, we need that help for my child. But so this actually helps, when we talk about who we're creating value for, it helps the school and it helps the government, because we don't have to find so much money, because you could use something like this to read it out loud for you, which is very good. Okay, what's the next thing, Ollie, that it's got there?
So where it said that it also chunks out the content for you, and then you can tap on specific things and it will highlight and tell you about it more clearly. And then the third storyboard, it's saying how it's making it fun and interesting for specifically aiming at the younger generation. So it's creating sort of like a point system, so how you can earn points by using it. So there's like a fun aspect in there as well, which it understands, because we haven't really provided it with the information to go ahead and create it, make it fun, but it understands that that's what children want.
So without us telling it that ought to think about how we reward or how we acknowledge what somebody's done. It's come up with that idea itself and told us that that's what we want to do. Okay, so what you do to make sure that somebody wants this. Yes, question? Yeah. That's right. So the risk is that AI doesn't really come up with original ideas. So what it's doing is taking lots of information from lots of different places and pulling it in and combining that information. Most of innovation is about recombining information. There's rarely anything actually new in the world. So it's going to take information like Duolingo and say, okay, well, this app works quite well. People like rewards. People all use that. So we'll try that and see what happens. So it's taking that from known things that work. So let's go ahead, Ollie, and say, yes, we like that. Could you go ahead and create it? And then let's have a look and see how it's doing with our other challenge. So you don't have to know how to code. All Ollie's doing here is saying, we like that idea and we like that flow. Because if you tell it you specifically like something or make sure it includes it, one of the things that AI does is it's speeding up what would take you a long time to learn. But if you like Duolingo, you can say to it, I like Duolingo, can you make it in that style? Now, we shouldn't be stealing other ideas from other people, but we would be saying, we like this style. Yeah, go ahead. There's a microphone there for you as well.
Also, I have another question. If you were to get this, could you use the information from that, read through it, and then use that information to learn how to code?
You can. So I'm going to say Ollie was never taught to code, but I was. So when I was at school, when I went to university, I learnt to code properly. But Ollie's never learnt to code. But what he can actually do is you can use this and then you can see the code behind it. And you could use that to learn to code properly. So what I tend to do is look at what Ollie's done in what we call vibe coding, which is this, where you're using natural language, just how you'd speak. And then I would go into it and I'd think to myself, how did it do that then? Because I know how to code. And what it does is it helps you understand, so if you needed to, you could code properly. Because if you were really successful and your project was massively successful, actually you can't make this scaled to go to the whole world. You would have to put it into proper language at some stage. But if you were doing something just for your school, then you can just use Claude and keep it small. But if you were trying to do something that's going to scale, you'd need to. So absolutely. You can also say to it, Claude, teach me how you coded this. What were the steps you go through? And Ollie, I don't know if you... Can you go into that? I'm not sure if you can on your phone rather than on your laptop, where it does the steps that it's taken.
No, you can't see that.
You can't do that on your phone, okay. So on your laptop, you can actually go back and it shows you, here's the steps I took to create this. So it's really cool because it can help you from that perspective. So you don't have to go to, I went to university for 4 years to learn this, but you can do it a lot quicker now in other places and go to university for something far more interesting than sitting there learning to code. I loved coding, but you know. For business skills, future of business. But you could go to university then to learn about, like I work in the space economy, so you'd learn about space. That's far better to learn at university. Cool. Okay, so Ollie, this is now it's coded.
So this is our other app that we asked it to start on. So this is the storyboard for that.
Okay.
So yeah, this is detecting misinformation, this one.
Brilliant. Do you want to explain how
so it looks like it's decided that it's going to be sort of an add-on to your browser, and then it's going to be scanning constantly for that. So, I mean, you could say, well, I actually wanted my app I input the information, so I highlight some text and put it in. But if you wanted it like an add-on, then it's decided that it's going to be an add-on. So from here, you could say, actually, I want the app to just be an application which I import the information rather than it just always scanning. But that's sort of up to you, what you decide.
Okay, so this is called passive detection. So passive means that you don't do anything, but whatever's there, it's going to look at and tell you whether it's true or not. Now, it can't be 100% sure if something's true or not. So it's going to give you presumably a red, yellow, green
I assume so. We can have a
type
look.
thing. Should we have a look and see what it says? Excellent. So it's saying here that the source credibility, the claim is verified, emotional language, and actually it's saying that this is a really bad thing. So red is bad. So red in the world means danger typically, doesn't it? I'm not sure that it's got the numbers right because that 72% doesn't look represented. So it's really important. AI gets things wrong all the time. So you have to go back and say, hey, that doesn't look like this. That doesn't look like 72% to me. That looks like probably 50 on that line. So it's misrepresented the picture there. And you have to check AI and make sure it's doing it, just like you have to check your little brother or sister whether they're telling the truth over whether they've eaten their sprouts or not. You have to check whether AI is doing a good job. So this tells you what's wrong with it. It says it's not very credible. That domain was only registered 3 weeks ago. So it's not a company that's been going for a long time. It's not somebody that's been doing something for a while. So that looks a bit dodgy, we think. And then no peer-reviewed studies. So a peer-reviewed study is where you wrote it and then you asked your friends to read it for you. And your friends are all clever people as well. And they read it and they go, yes, we think your data is correct. We think what you wrote is a good thing. So that's what peer reviewing is. And that happens in research in universities all the time. We peer review each other's work. Then it says emotional language. So emotional language is a really interesting one. People are trying to make you do something by pressurizing you, by using emotional language to make you do that. So it's picking up on all the things that are saying, this is probably not a credible source. This is something that we wouldn't want to show. Does it have anything else any lower, Ollie?
Sort of its overall verdict onto what it thinks.
So a verdict is it's likely to be false information. Why would we want to know that? Why might we want to know that? You know, if you go and say to somebody, did you know that Freddie won the race? And then you find out Freddie didn't win the race. That's not a good thing, is it? So you want to make sure that what you're saying is true, what you're reading is true, and what you're passing on is true. Mics are always good fun. It's got a green light on it. They'll switch it, will they? Okay. Go ahead.
System of data, which is called the Data Protection Act 1990, enforced by the government, it will likely detect that it's false and it will let you know immediately so that you're not credible or at risk of any life-threatening situations or life-threatening malware or such things that could really harm either your laptop or your phone.
Yeah, so that's really important, isn't it? Because it can go from life-threatening if you give the wrong information to somebody about what to do. If somebody faints, you're not supposed to give them water because it can set off a problem in their throat that actually makes them choke. So if you were looking for some data and you want to know, is this correct? I've just looked this up and it says it's not likely to be. You'd be thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to kill the person I was trying to look after. It could just be that your PC, it's malware. Malware means somebody's trying to infect your PC so that your PC doesn't work or steal the information from your PC. So there's lots of reasons why we need to make sure the information we have and what we're going to pass on or do is true. So this is a great way of doing that. So we've created a prototype now, and then we would go out with this prototype and we would actually show you and say, what do you think of this? And you would test it and you'd say, well, the first thing I spotted was that it didn't work properly on the red, the 72%. That didn't look like 72% to me. So we would go back. And Ollie, do you want to go back? Because we've got some evidence now. So we're going to refine that number and tell it that it didn't look like the circle represented the percentage. So we're going to ask it to go back The aesthetics goes for a hand-drawn notebook. So we're going to say to it that it didn't look like it had done it right and ask it to correct it, and then we're going to go back. So when we looked at how you turn an idea into innovation, that's because you're going through this test and refine. And this prototyping just speeds that up because you can see we've done it in minutes, and then you can take it out. In the past, when I was younger and I had to code everything by hand with my teams, that would have taken weeks for us to do that. But we would have done a storyboard first, and if we didn't have anything, we might have even used pen and paper and said, what do you think about this? But if you're coding it, it would have taken us weeks to do that, to come back to you and say, what do you think about this app? Weeks and weeks and weeks.
Old-fashioned ways from, for example, when the war was starting and, for example, when they weren't
I'm not
using
that old.
mobile devices like phones and laptops, they would instead be using pen or pen
That's
and
right.
paper.
And they wouldn't have had access, would they?
Writing, yeah.
Yeah.
And if something didn't look right, then it would be sent back or something like that, and they would have to redo everything.
That's
which
right.
Obviously, would take a lot of time and a lot of amount of feeling or emotion to write something like that.
Yes. So you'd get really hung up on, but I spent ages writing this, ages drawing this. And then the person said, can you make it red instead of green? Could you do this instead of that? And it's going to take you weeks again to fix it. So you get far more emotionally attached to it than Ollie is. Ollie cares about his work, but he can just type this in and it can be fixed instantly. So actually that's a really good thing because it takes away any feelings you have about, not doing it right. Because it doesn't matter, because you can fix it really quickly. So it's a really good thing. Oh, that's much better. Well done, Claude. So what did you type in, Ollie? What did you tell it?
We can go look at the prompt. So I said it in frame 2, it looks like your percentage analysis was wrong. It says 70%, I can remember exactly what percentage was, but the circle's wrong, please change it. And then from that, it went ahead and changed it.
Okay, so we basically told it that it was wrong, and told it what we thought, that it was 50%, and asked it to think about it again. And so it's just like anybody. You're asking it to redo something, rethink your answer, and go back. But you're not going to be caught up in it emotionally, and it can do it like that. So AI allows us to do this really quickly and really easily. Can you flick back to the screen with the green writing on it? Thank you. So now we've refined this, which is you're improving the app. So what would that do? If we've made something better, it's more likely that you're going to use it, isn't it? If your problem is in this app, it's far more likely you're going to use it. Because we've refined it based on feedback. What would you do if you went to 4 friends and 2 of them said they liked it and 2 of them said they didn't? They've all got the same problem that they're trying to fix. 2 like it, 2 don't like it. What would you do?
I would maybe restart again and maybe build it up from the ground up and maybe make it so they like it, like change the colors, change fonts maybe, make sure it's secure and on a really good suggestive website, like for example Gemini, or for example what Claude is using.
Yeah.
And basically not Bing AI, as that is a very risky website and a very risky AI mode, which I would not suggest to use.
Yeah, it can be.
So it's made us the app that we coded originally for helping people learn. So we can just have a look at that.
Okay, let's do that then, Ollie.
So we can see here it's saying, like, how would you like to learn? So let's say you like reading, and then you choose your level. It hasn't quite coded, so you can see he hasn't quite coded it properly, putting it on the screen. So that would be something that you would go back and change. And then it's asking simple questions. You can see up here, it's got a like a bar, progress bar. So which food grows on trees? Apples. And then it's even told you a little bit of information at the bottom as well. So that's all what it's coded based off of our storyboard at the start.
And this was, we didn't tell it what age group to do, but if we had more time, we would ask it to do one for your age group, or we would ask it to do one for seniors, 15 to 18s, and see what would come up. And it would be different because it would be more complex. But that's the power of AI, is it can figure out what's needed. It goes off and figures out what's needed at the time. Could you flick back to my slides, please, Ollie? So hopefully what we've shown you today is you have ideas all the time, whether that's in the shower, walking the dog. I've got a big dog. I've got a Rhodesian Ridgeback. She needs lots of walking. She likes Ollie. Ollie doesn't take her out for walks, I do. And you come up with ideas. You've got a problem, you come up with ideas. You have to really make sure you understand what the problem is deeply. Then the easiest way to do this is to prototype, and you'll hear later how to prototype it without technology, but we use technology to do this. So prototyping means you make it visible, you can show it to people, you can test it quickly. So it speeds up the whole innovation process. Then you can test and gather evidence, refine it based on the feedback, so you do it obviously more deeply than we've done it, and then you can adopt it because it's easier to embed into real use. Can you roll forward? The other thing that you should do is you should make sure you understand who it is that you're creating value for. So this is called a persona. What are they trying to do? How old are they? Where do they live? You'd write all these things down so to make sure that you really understand who your project is aimed at. Next one. AI accelerates the process. So this will all be sent out to you. So you could use this if you were going to do this in school or at home. Identify any assumptions that you made. Next screen, Ollie. Test it with real people. So it's really important you test it with real people because otherwise it's just an idea and you don't know if anybody really likes it or would use it. And then you can use AI to accelerate that process, whether it's prototyping, storyboarding, sketching. I can't draw. I'd love to be able to draw, but I can't. So I use AI for the sketching. And then you're iterating, which just means you're going around it from the feedback. Next slide. So that's just to show you, this is what you've done in the last 3/4 of an hour. So you've gone through what is a process. And even when we teach adults, this is the process that we teach them. So this is how you move yourself from idea to innovation and how you use AI as a prototyping tool to speed things up. And use whatever you like as an AI tool, but use it safely, use it with your families, your adults, or use it with your schools. And thank you very much. Hopefully that was useful for you.